30 years ago, Robert Sereci entered the hospitality field with a genuine desire to make meaningful difference in people's lives, both the people he serves and those he leads. Robert sees himself as a community builder within the club industry. His proficiency lies in his vision for positive change and embracing the trends for the future. Robert has a unique perspective that he brings to his leadership position in that he utilizes his business acumen to further develop clubs that are at a pivotal point in their growth potential. Robert enjoys the challenge of assisting his boards, team, and membership in embracing and guiding them through evolutionary change. Hired as general manager and chief operating officer of Medina Country Club in 2015, Robert is a strong collaborator and a team builder and has worked to strengthen and empower the Medina brand. Prior to Medina Country Club, Robert most recently was GM of the American Club in Hong Kong, a 3,000 member club founded in 1925. In addition to being a CCM, Robert holds a degree in hotel and restaurant management from Cal Poly Pomona and an MBA from Georgia State University. When not working, Robert enjoys writing and is a regular contributor to Boardroom Magazine. He has been a guest on multiple podcasts, presented at CMA chapters across the country, and presented at CMA World Conference. Robert is also a passionate street photographer who travels the globe documenting the human condition. And I happened to stumble on a few of those photos earlier this week, which are exciting. I'm delighted to have you to speak with us today, Robert. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll attempt to share my screen with you. Can Are we good with the? Everybody can see my PowerPoint. We're good.
Yes.
Okay. There is a misconception that somehow either leaders or individuals who have demonstrated some sort of success at their jobs, be it clubs or anywhere else, that they have been blessed with some sort of either upbringing or some sort of education that has allowed them to experience the kind of success they have. And the reality is that for majority of us, that is not the case. Much of what I've learned, and like most of you, has been through my past. And our past has shaped us into the individuals we are today. And much of that shaping and learning did not come from school. Mine began way earlier in my childhood. I was born in Yugoslavia, a communist state, communist country, and where we had the red scarves, and we lined up and sang our allegiance, basically to the Communist Party, early age. So for 10 years, I grew up in a communist regime in very relatively poor conditions. My sister had to live with my grandmother because we couldn't afford to all live together. My dad moved to the U.S. to make money and ship it back home. Living there for 10 years, and while my dad was making a living in the U.S., sending money back home, he had an opportunity to work for an American company in Switzerland. So I went from living in borderline poverty in a communist country to now I moved to Switzerland, and where I go to a middle school, and I am one of 79 kids in the entire middle school, with a bunch of expat kids who were shipped over to Switzerland. So I went from one extreme to the other. After my middle school, I stayed on and I went to a girls' private high school. What's interesting is you'll notice that of the 94 students in the entire school, 18 were boys and 76 were girls, right? So think about the extremes from one extreme to the other. Switzerland is notorious for places where rich people send their kids off to school, whether it's the kids of Idi Amin, the Shah of Iran, David Bowie, and all that. So this is kind of the juxtaposition of growth. Having been schooled in Switzerland is not an indication of how intelligent you are. It's just basically an indication of money and wealth. So having done that for about 4 years, my average GPA in high school, I graduated with 2.0. I was voted one of the least likely to succeed, which was a very small distinction. And nothing came easy. To give you an idea how hard it was, remember now how many boys of the 18 boys that we had, I could not make the basketball team, right? I'm thinking, you will not allow me to be in a basketball team with only had five, they had five, six kids. And one of the things I did is I don't give up very easily, and it's about perseverance. And for almost an entire year, I had to work my rear end off and practice in order to be allowed to be on the team. And after being on the team, I did wonderful things, and I enjoyed my experience. But it was constant struggle from the beginning all the way to the end. Nothing came easy. High school graduation, right before graduation, in that very office that's on there, the dean of the school asked my mother and father to join us and informed us that her recommendation is that we don't waste our money on college, that Robert should not take college trips abroad to the US because with a GPA of 2.0, highly unlikely he's going to do well. He should go to vocational schools. Well, my mom didn't want to hear anything about that, and she's one of my biggest supporters and cheerleaders and said, you know what? No, he will go on to go to college. 5 months after that meeting, we ended up moving to the US. My father was moved back to Los Angeles, and I attended Cal Poly Pomona. Cal Poly Pomona was a wonderful school. Same thing, struggle for me. Education was a big deal. I got a 2.72, I believe, my GPA in college. But here's the challenge. When I was in at Cal Poly, I was supposed to go back and do an apprenticeship program in Switzerland so I can learn everything about food and beverage and have a robust training. The war broke out in Yugoslavia and they took away my passport, basically leaving me stranded for lack of a word in the US, and I was unable to get my training in Switzerland in hospitality. What you need to know is for 4 years at Cal Poly, I didn't work in a restaurant. I did my 2,000 hours, but I worked in a credit union. I had no experience in food and beverage. But somehow, when you're young, when you're aggressive, I wanted to be the youngest CCM, the youngest general manager, and after only 2 years out of school, as a prank from my previous boss who said, you want to be a GM? You think it's that easy? Go apply. And I did. Only 26 years old, I applied to be the general manager at the Santa Barbara Yacht Club. And to my surprise, I got it. I got the job as a 26-year-old who knows very little to nothing as being the general manager of the small club in Santa Barbara. Everything went fine, at least I thought, for a year, two, three. And then there was some turmoil, right, with the staff, and things were not going well. So the board asked that I get a 360. And guess what? I got my 360. And lo and behold, it was not quite what I expected. My 360 came out at 3.5 out of 5. And my two highest scores, and I don't know if you can read it, or has a desire to succeed, was 4.6 and takes pride in his work. That's 4.4. My lowest scores were coachable at 2.8 and respecting of others, 2.6. I had just met my wife Jennifer at the time I got this 360, and I can tell you that I cried like a baby for about 2.5 days. Because for my staff to praise me, the two greatest things, if you can see what they praise me for, he smells great and he has great charisma. Think about that. That's what they wanted to praise me for. But at the bottom, they said he cares more, he should care more about the club and less about himself. Less focus on his career, more focus on your team. You know how hurtful that is, yet how truthful that is? That was my wake-up call. Because you see, for almost 4 years, I was bluffing my way through because if you have charisma and you have the gift of gab, you can pretty much BS your way through pretty much a lot of things. But it doesn't mean that you know what you're doing or that you're adding value to the people around you. Following that 360, it was a pivotal moment for me. Luckily for me, about just a short time later, I saw this magazine. Time Out came out with front cover of EQ. I have this edition to this day. And basically it was a light bulb moment for me to realize that, you know what? I may not have the IQ, I may not be the smartest person, but I have a pretty good high EQ and I should focus on that. And that's what I have done, right? In the last 20 some odd years, it's not about my experience in food and beverage. It's not about my experience. I focused on both of those soft skills, those skills that were never taught to me in college, or my MBA classes that allowed me to experience the kind of success and I have today. And these are the 10 lessons I want to share with you in that through failure, through failure of doing this 9 times, I have moved 9 places, 3 different continents. I have been fired, not once, but I've been fired once, unemployed twice, right? All of these lessons have come at the backs of my mistakes and my failures that I have learned to adapt, to learn better, and to implement. And I want to share those with you today. The first one is something that is very prevalent in our industry, at least I think it is, in that, between food and beverage, wine, golf, we have a lot of individuals that come and are really deeply passionate about their jobs. And they keep saying they have a passion for food, they have a passion for wine, they have a passion for golf. And what I found out is that people that come into our industry, you know, are so passion driven that I don't think they realize that passion is not enough to sustain them in this career, right? Passion is good, but it's not enough. The other problem with passion is that individuals that are very passionate, and by the way, it's just not young folks, it's also very seasoned managers who are very passionate. The challenge with passion is that people come to a club and they come to the workplace expecting your employer, expecting me to fulfill their passion. That's not how this works, right? Our job is to basically add value to the membership, add value to the people around us, but fulfilling a team member's passion is not one of them. And so it is better for individuals to focus on their purpose rather on their passion, especially if someone is still kind of going through the ranks. I suggest that they focus more on a craftsman mindset and to focus on what is skill set they can enhance and what is it that they can offer their club. Finding your purpose is not as easy as it sounds. It takes deliberate effort and time to focus on that. For me, following that 360 was a pivotal moment in that it was probably one of my darkest moments, one of the most depressing times. And it was my father who I went to see probably 3 days after I got my review. And my father, who was a great mentor and a leader to me, and pulled, pulled me outside, and I was again crying like a baby, just hurt that all they could think of is how I dress and how dare they. And it's my father who basically said, I know you're running a race. I know you want to be the youngest CCM. I know you want to be the youngest GM. I said, you also want to be the one making the most money. He says, are you sure you're running the right race? He says, is that really why you got into this business? At the time, it took me a while to figure it out, but understanding why you're doing this is exponentially more important than what you're doing. Finding purpose in your work, right? The earlier you can figure that out, the earlier you can articulate it, the easier it'll be for you to get through a career. And here's why. The challenge with people who have a passion tend to fizzle out and get to burn out quicker. People that are very passionate are very, very excited and very energetic. I jokingly say that my dog, my golden retriever Finn, he's very passionate as well. The minute he sees a tennis ball, he's just so excited. An hour into our little like throwing back and forth, he's done, right? He's done. Passion's a little bit like that. People that are very passionate, if someone does not agree with their passion or doesn't contribute to their passion, they don't take it very well, right? If somebody criticizes their work because they're passionate, whatever, they get offended easily, right? And that's the problem with passion. It can knock you off course very quickly. Purpose is different. Following that meeting with my father, I sat down and I wrote this all kind of notes on what is my purpose. And that's when I discovered and I decided to make a purpose statement. And for me, I wanted to make a difference and improve the lives of the people that I serve and the people that I lead. That's it. I don't really care about all the other stuff. All I care about is everything that I do has to make an improvement in the lives of the people that I lead and those that I serve. And once you focus on your purpose and you fully wholeheartedly believe in that, no amount of hard work or stress or any kind of club politics will ever change that, because it takes exponentially more to veer you off course if you are very purpose driven. Now, for those of you that are either just graduated, have just graduated, and you're having a hard time articulating your purpose, my suggestion to you is not to ask yourself what is your purpose, but to ask yourself who is it that you want to help. And once you figure that out, you'll have probably an easier time understanding what your purpose is. Whether you're just starting off or whether you're new to the club, I can tell you that my challenge was that I thought I knew more than I actually did. One of the benefits of moving to 9 different clubs with only about 3 years as a turnaround person, right? I mean, that's kind of what I do. I help clubs get back on their feet and then move on. Medina at 6 years is the longest I've been in my career. Never, I received my first 5-year pin at Medina. And having started from the beginning, having started from day one so many times, I can tell you that early on I made a lot of mistakes from club to club, thinking that I knew what was going on, that I knew what to do. My advice for those of you that are starting off and you're just starting in your club, in the club business, I would ask that you respectfully lower your expectations, right? Lower your expectations. Chances are you're going to be doing things that probably are not something you envisioned. It may seem like it's beneath you. They're going to ask you to do so many remedial tasks, and you're going to feel like you're wasting your time on your career. The truth of the matter is you're not. You're not. These remedial tasks, these what you consider remedial tasks, are instrumental in the overall success of your leadership style and your career. If you think about some of the things that we do on a regular basis, be it working out, right? Again, I use the example of brushing your teeth, running a marathon. It takes a lot of small work, routine work, day in and day out to grind it out in order for you to experience the end result at the end, right? So if you don't think these remedial tasks are important, try not training for a marathon and just simply run 26 miles. It doesn't work that way. Don't brush your teeth for a year and a half. See what happens. These tasks are critical. The same thing happens when you start at a club or you're taking over a new club, right? It takes time. It takes time to work on developing these relationships, watching, right? And you'll know you will not improve. You will not notice any kind of major improvements week after week, but through these diligent tasks that you've been assigned over and over, with time you will see a tremendous amount of improvement. When a club hires you, this is again for those young folks coming who have just started their career. When you are hired by a club, you've been hired because the club sees there is an opportunity for you to grow. You are worthy of the investment, right? And they're willing to spend time and effort with you. I know Randy is a huge supporter of hiring young individuals, and he invests a tremendous amount of time and effort, right? Your focus should be to absorb everything that's being offered to you in an effort to master your craft, right? But make sure you work for someone that understands and believes and subscribes with someone who believes in learning and growing and giving you the opportunity to learn. Oftentimes, we're so focused on brand name clubs. We're so focused on pedigrees. I always wanted to work for a top this, top that, rank this, rank that. It really doesn't matter. What matters is that you find the right place, be it the right employee culture, the right member culture, and the right person who believes in you and wants to help you grow. People underestimate the importance of reading. Um, there's a saying, I think, what was it? I think it's Tom Wallace or Kirk Keebler who says leaders are readers. Absolutely, absolutely. I go through roughly 25 to 30 books a year, and it's one of the ways that I kind of expand my education. Even I've been in this business for a while. We have to, for those of you who have been in the business, we have to, as they say, sharpen the saw, and reading is a big, big part of that. Now, when you start out, this applies to both club managers that have been in the business for a while or young folks coming in. We have this dire need when we start into a new club, be it young or someone as a seasoned. We have this dire need to come in and flex our muscles to demonstrate how much we know. And what we do is we walk around, the white glove test. We look at menus that have a smudge on them. We say, I can't believe that. They see a light bulb out, and they say, what kind of place is this? Can you believe that? Look at the fingerprints on the glass. Windows are not clean. And what happens is, as we do this, right? As we do this, we are demonstrating that we are very superficial and we care about the visual stuff, when in reality, what we should be doing is fostering relationships. Again, whether you've done this for 20 years, 30 years, or just starting out, especially the beginning, is to ease up on demonstrating value by pointing things out, but to focus more on relationship building and developing and understanding the culture first. A critical mistake that many make, and I have made it multiple times, and that is throwing previous managers, previous employees under the bus. Bad mistake. Very, very bad mistake. Now, it is almost like a again, it's almost natural when you see something that's wrong or that's bad and you know that you can improve it. It's just very natural that for us to say, well, that is so wrong. I can't believe they did it that way. They should have never done it. I'm telling you, don't do that. Because what you fail to realize is when you do that, is that all of the individuals that are now you've been entrusted to lead are looking up to you as a role model. You throwing their previous GM, or you as the new clubhouse manager, restaurant manager, throwing the other person under the bus, will not gain you credibility or build confidence or help you build trust with your team members. One sure way to erode trust is to do exactly that, is to throw previous people under the bus. Don't do that, no matter how much tempted you feel you want to do. Any questions so far?
I have a question just about one of your points on the last slide. What two books would you recommend, or what are your two favorite books?
So, I can email a whole list. I will tell you that Simon Sinek's book is incredible. He's got the why, start with why, and then he's got a workbook that goes along with it. Believe it or not, I mean, the Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, it's so rudimentary, but I really suggest that you should read that. Shoe Dog for Phil Knight, who started Nike. Um, Malcolm Gladwell has great books, tremendous amount. And speaking of reading, by the way, I would really suggest that, sure, read Club Resort Business, Boardroom Magazine. I read all that stuff too, but you have to read something different. Read periodicals, read trade publications for other industries, right? Read something from the business world different, just so you can get a different perspective, right? Because there's only so much you can learn about how many chafers there are. And the technology of chafing dishes and table skirting probably hasn't improved that much. So while you should read our industry publication, but be sure to read something else. Any other questions? All right. This is probably one of my favorite lessons, and it's one that took me forever to master. I mean, literally took me a long time. And I Actually, I learned this in my MBA class, and there was a whole class on decision making, which I thought was crazy, but it was actually a very valuable lesson. And what I've learned in the last many years is that I kept misdiagnosing problems very frequently, and one of the reason why is because I always perceive symptoms as the actual problems, and that was a massive learning experience and a wake up call for me, because when you apply for a job, be it restaurant manager, club manager, GM, whatever it is, I mean, search committees always do that, right? They, we have a problem here. The fries are cold, or our financials are poor, or with slow service, you can't get our orders right. All of those issues that I just cited are actually not problems. They're symptoms. And what we do is we typically focus on symptoms and not root cause of problems. So all of these things that I talk about are usually symptoms of a larger problem. So rather than what I spoke just earlier about flexing your muscles, walking in, and light bulbs are out and the white glove test and dust, take a step back, take a deep breath, and make sure you solve the right problem. But to solve the right problem, you have to identify what is the problem first of all, and what is the root cause to the problem. And to do that, you have to have the relationships, you have to have the trust in the culture where you are able to ask questions and observe. So if you're a relatively new member to a team, right? If you think you know what the problems are, chances are you don't. Chances are you don't, because one of the things about starting to make changes too quickly, which a lot of people do, again, because you want to demonstrate that your boss did the right thing in hiring you, the search committee did the right thing in hiring you, absence of history and context, right? And in club, we know, right? We know that history and context play a critical role in why things are done the way they are. If something looks a little strange, it's because there's a reason why it's that way. If something looks out of place, or if something doesn't look appealing, find out what is the history. You'll find out that maybe it was done by the president's ex-wife. Maybe it's done because one of the sacred cows decided to do that. So find out, first of all, what it is that's the problem. In my 20 some odd 30-year career, I can tell you that these are the two things, having again moved 9 clubs, right? Starting day one 9 times. Here's what I have, the two most commonly misdiagnosed problems. When I interview for a GM job, this is what I typically get. We have a people problem, right? We have a people problem, right? They don't know what they're doing, right? They're not trained, right? In my experience, 95 or 99% of the time, what appears to be a people problem is actually a process problem. In process problem, in that they don't understand, they don't have the tools and the processes to make them successful, right? There's very little communication, very little documentation, and to establish a process, whether it's very little job descriptions or some sort of a training of what it is they're supposed to be doing. So it's not a people problem, it's a process problem. The second one that I get a lot is we have a motivation problem. Our employees are not motivated, or our leadership team is not motivated. And again, in 99% of the time, what seems like a motivation problem, in my experience, is a direction problem. It's not that people are not motivated. People don't lack motivation. What they really lack is direction. We are so busy working in the trenches and working and producing that we don't often share the destination postcard and tell people what direction we're going to begin with. So we're busy working, but we have not shared our destination with those who work for us. So for me, these are the two most common uh, that I've had in my experience. Any questions so far? Okay. For those of you who've been in the club business for a while, I think would agree that our industry, our job is anything but black and white. But the challenge is that many of us who are either still in the business or who have entered the profession tend to have a very idealistic view of the world. And this is very common with young club professionals coming out of school or early in the ranks. And what happens is if you're relatively new to the industry, you have this idea of how things should be done, um, and how you were taught to be done, and everything is a little bit more black and white. The reality in this industry, everything is gray. Um, we have black, we have white, and we've got a whole world of gray in the middle. This is very difficult, not just for young professionals coming through the club business, but also for established club professionals. Working in the gray is one thing, but for us, for those of us who want to be successful in the club industry, we not only have to be comfortable in in this gray, we have to thrive in gray, right? And what better example, as if our industry and our jobs were not gray enough? Think about COVID, right? COVID. COVID proved to us that we can not only we can thrive in ambiguity. I mean, there was nothing, there was no playbook, there was no processes for all this, right? And this is in an industry where we were like very stodgy and we lag, right? Innovation and everything else, right? But look, COVID was just a lot of ambiguity and we all did really well. So it is possible. We have to just, again, not just accept to work in a world of gray, but thrive in it. In my experience, the people that struggle with this the most are usually senior managers who come from a background of very policy driven. CFOs, for example, right? Everything is very policy driven, right? And it has to be. It's accounting, and you gotta have. But these are the individuals that have maybe sometimes a little more difficult time. Um, Individuals that come from hotels have a hard time because everything is very policy driven, and they have a hard time adjusting to this kind of environment. The other thing about being gray is that depending on the geographic location of the club, depending on the type of club, the culture, the culture from club to club is extraordinary. I remember I've been clubs to from a yacht club where if we just ask people to just wear shoes, right? To go from a yacht club, I've been at Cherokee Town and Country Club where you can wear pretty much any color suit you want as long as it's black, brown, or blue at the time, right? At the time, staff was not allowed to wear pantsuits, right? I think it's relaxed now, but every club's a little different, right? The Jonathan Club downtown is very different than a club in Oklahoma City versus a club in Hong Kong, right? So understanding the cultural rigidity of your club will give you some indication of how gray they are. For new team members, whether you're new to a club and you've been in the business for a while, or whether you're just starting out, um, again, don't rush into making decisions, right? Slow it down. And I think if I say slow it down, and if you think I mean slow, I mean like even slower, right? All the way down to just you think you're going like you're crawling, and that's what it should feel like. Every club has its unique culture. Every single club is very different. And contrary to popular belief that a country club is a country club, not really. A golf club in one area is very different than golf club in an area. I can tell you Northeast clubs are very different than those in the South, than those in California. So take your time, get to know the culture. Don't make decisions quickly. And if you hear yourself saying, but this seems like a no-brainer, trust me on this one. Trust me on this one. There is no-brainers in private clubs. Low-hanging fruit, no such thing, right? Because that low-hanging fruit that you start to tackle on, you will find out that has so much more context, so much history that you can't take it back, right? So take your time, make sure you understand, develop relationships, ask a lot of questions, and be patient. Be patient. So we have some questions, I believe.
Yeah, Robert, I have a question that came through and maybe kind of two parts. Going back to your comment about not speaking ill of the dead, if you will. How do you suggest managers or staff sort of diffuse or redirect that dialogue? And then, second part to that is, having to go into a position where the expectations are high. You made the comment of lowering expectations for how quickly I think that you make decisions or progress.
Yeah.
How do you get the board and the committees and the rest of the structure on board with that?
Yeah, great questions. Great question. So the first question of how do you redirect that? So one of the things that I always encourage my team to do is to practice empathy, right? And that is put yourself in somebody else's shoes. So I'll give you an example. Imagine you're coming into an established culture, an established club family who have been together for many years, right? I mean, clubs, the lower ranking fellow don't go anywhere. Now, it's a similar to imagine you are now the stepfather or you're dating a young lady and she has 3 kids, right? And they've been together for a long time, and this is their dad. You come in and you walk around the house and you watch them and you start criticizing them and you throw and you start criticizing their dad, right? I can't believe he let you guys do. I can't believe, right? That's not how you win people over, right? It's hurtful to them because the way they see that person is very different how you see it, right? The lens through which they saw their father, or the lens through which employees and managers saw the GM or the previous restaurant manager is very different from the lens you look at what was happening at the time. So think about if you are on the receiving end, you've been with this club for 10 years, 15 years, and you had a boss starting to criticize the person you cared for deeply. Mind you, you may be 100% right at what you're saying. How would that make you feel, right? What do you gain? What could you possibly gain other than inflating your own ego about throwing the other person on the bus? The only reason people do that is to give themselves more worth. There's no other valid reason why you should throw anybody under the bus or criticizing them, no matter how badly they've done, even if it was documented, even if it was documented, even if the board, he or she did something terrible. You have to remember, in clubs, relationships will trump expertise any day of the week. No matter what this person did, the people that are left behind still love and care probably for this person. You don't know that yet. Bad mouthing that person only makes it harder for you to build relationships and trust. So you don't do it. If anything, you speak positive. If anything, you err on the side of being generous, cautious, positive, right? Even if it's the worst thing ever, right? So you focus on that. This way you will have goodwill points with your team. You will be seen as somebody who's tolerant, who's compassionate, who has empathy, right? So that's what I would suggest on that one. The other question is, all right, but you said lower your expectations, but the board has high expectations. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And for those of you who've interviewed enough, like I've interviewed, I don't know, 50, 60 times, 80% of the time, what the board says once, right? Right. Actually doesn't have to happen on the time frame they're telling you. They don't expect you to do everything in the first 3 months, right? Yes, you have to demonstrate that you are doing something. You should have small wins, right? But educate them and tell them what you're doing. Taking time to meet with the president, with the past board members, taking time to meet with past employees, taking time. That's the kind of work. So demonstrate that you're doing something, but don't start making changes to appease the board, right? Or your boss, and then having to go back and dig your way back. When I interview, before I start, I make sure that we have an understanding of what the first 6 months look like, right? Because I know they're very impatient. So have an expectations of what I'm going to do for the 6 months. Tell them that you're going to spend most of your time communicating, learning the culture, meeting with people. I meet with 80 to 90 members at every club in the first 5 months. That takes a lot of time. That's how I spend my time, to meet with the team and meet with these members who can give me some insight into the club. Did that answer your question? Any other questions so far? Okay. This this is an important one, and it's something we I do this with every new manager, every new senior manager on my team at every club. Most of us think we understand, right? What is expected of us, and what is it that we have to do in order to be successful at a club. When you're first starting out, most young professionals focus on learning all their technical skills, right? Wine knowledge, food knowledge, all that stuff. But I can tell you with high degree of certainty that while those things are important, they are nowhere near as important as the relationships, the relationship building in private clubs. I think I said earlier, relationships will trump skills any day of the week in private clubs. Absolutely, absolutely. You know, um, you will also start to think that your main priority is your members and that you're there to serve your members. Sure, that is part of your job, but that's not your main purpose. Your main reason for being there is to be there for your staff, right? Your team is the most important, not the members. To your staff, the members are, but to you, the people you've been entrusted to lead are the most important because single-handedly you can't take care of all these members, right? But your staff you can, right? When you start, again, going back to that flexing your muscles, you will have this again compulsive need, just like you will to badmouth somebody before you. You will also again have this a thing that if you have some early successes, you will believe that single-handedly you're going to make a big difference in this club, right? And everyone's going to notice you because that's what you want. You want to be noticed, right? My suggestion again is to take a step back and focus on the people. It is incredible how little focus is given to the people that you've been entrusted to lead. Managers will spend more time doing research on wine and wine lists. If you know more about wines, regions, and then where they come from than you do about the very people you've been entrusted to lead, that's not a good thing, right? So it takes study, it takes time. Focus on your team, right? Meet with them, get to know them. I have a questionnaire that I sent prior to my arrival at every club, right? It's all about the people you've been entrusted to lead. That's priority number one. Spend time to get to know them. Take care of them. Take care of them because ultimately they're the ones who are going to make you successful. So, how do you determine how your club keeps score? It is imperative that you have conversations beforehand and when you start with your board, with your boss, right? If you're working for a GM, talk to your GM, talk to the board, your president, to have a full understanding of how they value or how do they keep score at your club. For example, some clubs love the chef to come out and talk and give hugs and kisses. Some clubs don't. Some clubs want the superintendent to be visible and be kind of a brand ambassador. Some clubs don't. Some clubs prefer that the director of golf play. Other clubs don't. GMs, there's some clubs that want their GM to be front and center. Some don't. Understanding, right? How does your club keep score? What's more important? What is the what's the most important thing for the club? What does the club value? At Medina, I can tell you, at Medina, relationships are first and foremost. You can be the smartest person in the club, but if you don't have a tight-knit relationship, and Medina is a very intimate environment, right? I mean, it's just we're very open, we're very touchy-feely, we hug all the time. That's what we value in Medina, and we make sure that every senior manager that comes to the club is fully aware of that. Some clubs don't, but it's imperative that you find out and that you ask. One of the benefits of meeting with your team and meeting with, again, I meet with 80 some odd individuals throughout the first 5 months, is this is how you're trying to gather intelligence to find out what does this club value? How, what does it take to be successful in this club? And you will find that out as you ask more questions and learn more about the club.
Robert, real quick, someone asked, do you have a recommendation for a company or a way to evaluate the 360 or conduct the 360 evaluations?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Um, so I'm going to let me backtrack. I'm currently working with a vendor. Oops, sorry. Let's go back. I'm currently working with a vendor who is actually developing an online version of a 360. What we use at Medina, we are doing this with this company that'll be made available to club managers all over. There is all kinds of 360s, right? There is different kinds. It has to be done um, anonymously, right? And 360s are basically asking people that are above you, at your level, and below you to rate you in different criteria, but you don't know who says what. So there's plenty of options out there. We are working with a vendor to create it because I found out I'm learning that many clubs don't do this or have this important tool. So we're working with a firm that'll not only do that, but also we're working on a balanced scorecard. Timely that we're talking about this. The way we do it at Medina, the way I do it at every club, is I have a balanced scorecard approach. And I go to the board and I say, hey, listen, in order to be successful here for the club, there's four things we have to do. One, we have to make sure our members are satisfied, employees are satisfied, financially we meet our goals, and with goals and objectives we have to achieve. How do we weight these out? Typically, what happens, and by the way, our bonuses are based on the scorecard. It's 30% member satisfaction through surveys and comment cards. 20% is employee satisfaction, right, through 360s, employee surveys and member surveys. 30% is financials, right, with all of the overall net your department, and 20 is the team goals and objectives. And that's how I get buy-in. And so this is how we're going to keep score. Is everybody okay with that? So if we miss our budgets, they don't say, oh, no bonuses for you. Well, that's not how we keep score. If we completely miss our budget, we don't get 30% of our bonus. If we meet all the others, we still do. So that's my way of doing it. And we're working with this company to have the balanced scorecard on online platform so club managers can use it as well. Any other questions so far? Okay. For general managers, chances are a lot of us work very, very hard, right? I can't tell you how many people have reached out, called me, and said, Robert, I'm in trouble. I'm not meeting their expectations. They think I'm not doing a good job. I'm working my ass off. And one of the things that all of these calls have in common is that most of these GMs have been working really hard on the wrong things, right? So you have to make sure that if you think, even if you think you're doing the right thing, my suggestion is ask your president. If you feel comfortable, ask the executive committee, say, hey, just so we're clear, this is how this is how I work, this is how I spend my time. I do this every year with my board and at our retreat. And I said, look, there's four things I can do that I need to focus on. We all agree, and how do you want me to spend my time? And year after year, this is the way it comes out. My number one priority for me is to develop my team. Two, strategic vision and planning. That's kind of one of the things that I enjoy doing and I'm good at. Member relations is three. And guess what? Club operations is four. But what happens is most GMs work on club operations first, right? At the detriment of their team, the detriment of strategic planning and vision looking forward, or the member relations. So again, I suggest that you ask and find out, how do they want you to spend your time? Two, just like the 360, many club managers or GMs or assistant managers Do not get formal evaluations, right? Now, I asked my board to give me one every year. We've never done it before, but every year they all rate me. I would like to know that what I'm doing is effective and they're in agreement. If I get lower scores, it's just a heads up for me to realign these four things or do something different. More people fear, would rather not know because they have anxiety about knowing. I have more anxiety about not knowing. So if you don't have one, right? If you don't have one, I suggest that you do one. Um, Global Golf does our strategic planning and our member surveys. Our Kurt Keebler does our board retreats. And part of the board retreat is the GM and board survey, where they rate themselves and they rate me in the process, and we share those results. So um, that's my suggestion. Any questions? We'll move on to the next one. All right. So this is a little, this sometimes I get a little pushback from individuals on this and who may or may not subscribe to this, but this is my feeling, right? You know, I've heard so often that it is more important to be respected than liked. And this is an advice that we keep giving young professionals all the time. And I have to tell you, for the club business, yeah, there's no way. There's no way. I think it's wrong because in our business, relationships are more valued than skills. And for any of you who doubt that, do you have any employees that are marginally at have are good, are marginally okay? They're not the best, but boy, are they loved. How does that happen? How can an employee that may have skills that are so-so yet be revered and loved by the membership? Relationships, right? Do you know of any GMs that maybe not the most effective, maybe not, you know, they're not maybe the most earth-shattering or the most innovative, right? You see, how in the world do they get to be? Are they liked? Because the membership reveres them. They like it. People underestimate in clubs the power of like. I can tell you that I shared the same advice with my president, right? And it's very similar to GMs in that trying to be an effective GM or an effective president doesn't always yield positive results, right? Being liked, being seen as someone that's approachable is exponentially more important. Think about it from a GM perspective. Um, the average employee that we hire, right, is not an MBA. It's not, we don't work for Google. We're talking about good people that earn wages to feed their families. And do you think that the average person, if I asked them about, do you respect this general manager? Do you think they understand between respect and like? Can the average person, a ground crew, dishwasher, busboy, articulate that, right? What do they typically say about a boss or a GM or a supervisor? I like him. I like her. Oh my God, I like her a lot, right? Because no one's going to give you brownie points for being effective, right? Does, does the membership say, you know what? He was the most effective president we've ever had, but probably nobody liked the guy or the gal, right? So do not underestimate the power of like. Now, it doesn't mean it doesn't mean that your entire success in your career should be hinged on the back of being liked, right? It also you also have to demonstrate charisma. I mean, charisma. You have to demonstrate intelligence and competency in your trade. So, charisma, being liked is great. I mean, that's really important. But at some point, you have to demonstrate some sort of level of competency because being liked alone is not going to work. The human condition is also such that we tend to gravitate towards people we like. We tend to listen more to people we like. And we tend to work harder for people we like. So don't underestimate how important this is. And by the way, there is no one single formula to click on the like button, right? Being liked is an end result of doing a lot of little things correctly. What are those? Listening, listening, being able to just listen to people, listen to the team. Empathy. Empathy is a massive tool, right? Massive. Displaying empathy is one of the most important things you can do for your team. Now, remember, there's a difference between empathy, right, uh, um, and sympathy, right? Two different things. Sympathy is basically, I'm so sorry you feel this way. It's very superficial, right? That's sympathy. Oh, I'm so sorry for you. Empathy is more profound. Empathy is the ability to literally step out of your shoes, step into their shoes, to physically experience what they're experiencing, right? If someone, your team members, loses a child or loses a loved one, if you've never had that happen to you, you say, I am so, so sorry. That's empathy. If you've ever had that happen to you, it'll immediately, you step out of your own shoes and you put yourself to back when it happened to you and you feel the same gut-wrenching pain that they feel. That's empathy, right? And for every decision you make, you should always make a Herculean effort to demonstrate empathy, to put yourself in their shoes before you enact any policy or anything else. That's how people ultimately verbalize this like factor, right? You can't mandate, you can't dictate that people like you. It's all those actions. It's little by little that people will gravitate towards you. Any questions? Okay. One of the exercises that we do at Medina and every club that anyone that joins our team, especially in the senior management level, what I do is I ask them and we help them fill out a stakeholders exercise. And the reason why we do this is because unfortunately early on, I fundamentally misunderstood um, who was responsible for my success. I was dumb enough to believe that I single-handedly was responsible for my success, which ended up being absolutely incorrect. What I realized through a lot of mistakes is that many, many more people have a say-so in my success than I ever believed. And most individuals probably have not realized that either. So when you come to a new club or an existing club, well, we sit down with our new senior managers and we say, look, we're going to help you identify all those individuals who have a say-so in your success. In the club business, you and I both know, we all know that all it takes is a few individuals to sabotage you and make your life very miserable, where at some point you either quit or you're fired. And one of those individuals, or those individuals who have perfected this art, is sacred cows. And frankly, I could give a 2-hour seminar on dealing with sacred cows, but we won't. Mind you, all I can tell you is that do not have a negative view of sacred cows. Um, I have an alternative view that I think, again, empathy. I think they are in the position and they do what they do because the membership has trained them that way. It's a survival skill. Instead of fighting them, right, you need to how to collaborate, work with them, right? So you can move your agenda forward. But they are an example of individuals. They have a big say-so in your success. Most of us think that if I was hired by the GM, the general manager is the person who has a say in my success. Highly unlikely. He or she is one of many, right? They're influential members. There are influential staff. There are staff members who don't even work in your department that have a say-so in your success. There's members who have a larger voice than you think, but you don't know because you lack context and history. So writing it down, I suggest you kind of write it down and identify with your boss, with your employees, who are the stakeholders that have a say in my success, and then you keep that list because this is the list you have to manage, and this is the list where you have to kind of nurture these relationships. chances are you will probably have names on the list that you haven't spent time or nurtured that relationships in many years. Do it, right? Write your list. Write your list and then start working those relationships. And the sacred cows, I will tell you, I will tell you with high degree of certainty, more of my friends, more of my friends have lost their jobs because they've dealt to fight this fight way too early, right? And they've lost their jobs because they didn't realize how much say so these individuals had in their success because of relationships. The members will surround themselves around someone who's been there for 30 years before they surround yourself around you who's been there for maybe less than a year or two, right? Again, back to relationships. Do not fight that battle right off the bat. Do not, unless you're planning to die on that hill, don't fight that battle yet, right? But time and time again, I say this, and people still go head first right off the bat. Well, one apple, one rotten apple, the whole analogy of, I get it. I, I, I get that. But we're not the average company. We're dealing with people that have deep relationships, right? It's an emotional thing, right? I'm not saying don't tackle it, but don't tackle it right off the bat, right? Because that same person could be the reason why you will no longer be there a year from now. So, any questions on that so far? Right? Okay. So, as part of the exercise, you have to figure out by talking to your president, talk to your boss, who are the influencers, right? Who are the ones that can help you kind of spread the word and help you become more successful. Um, yeah, I mean, again, back to the sacred cows. Usually, it's someone from the outside or some sort of publication that says to get rid of all the sacred cows and the problem children, right? It's easy for people to say that from the outside. It's an entirely different thing when you're in the trenches with them, right? So again, I say it, I call it BS. Don't do that. Uh, uh, Take your time, figure it out, right? They're not always your enemy. They can help you. You just have to again practice empathy. Figure out why is it that they're doing what they're doing. Figure out their background. Figure out their history. Look, if there's been high turnover, you're one of I don't know how many GMs or club managers. They come and go. They've been here. You're going to be gone. They're going to be here. So be very careful. Tread carefully. What I do is I tell people to, if that is irritating you a little bit, why don't you just focus on why you were hired? Focus on all the other challenges. Get to know everybody else. Put that aside, right? Focus on what is it that you've been hired to do, first and foremost. Okay. Um, Questions? Okay. Understanding the difference between accomplishments and success. The reason why I struggled early in my career because I made the horrible mistake of taking my accomplishments as a sign of success. Accomplishments do not equate to success. And for the longest time, I had a very difficult time understanding the two because I wanted to be, when I looked at when I wrote down my goals and objectives when I was just getting ready to graduate, and it was like to be successful, and I had a whole list of things. 95% of those things on my list were just a list of accomplishments. And that's the problem. Many of us are so focused on accomplishments and we confuse those accomplishments for success, right? Nothing wrong with getting a CCM. Nothing wrong becoming an ECM, CCM, COO, right? Wine certification. All of those things are not necessarily signs of success. All that means is that you accomplished something, you achieved something, right? Success is very different. If you think about how many NBA players, how many professionals have achieved gold medals, NBA titles, and World Cups, and right to demonstrate that they're very They've got all the accomplishments in the world, but yet they're divorced, separated, difficult time with their families, um, unhappy, right? So you can have a tremendous amount of accomplishments yet not be successful. How many professional athletes end up being broke, all right, or destitute and get into trouble? Mind you, they have all of the tangible evidence to demonstrate of their accomplishments, yet they're still somehow they're not successful. So understanding how you measure your success, and I would encourage you to write it down. How do you define success? And by the way, I ask these questions at every interview when I interview for a GM job, and I ask them, how do you define success? And then I ask them, as successful as you are, why do you think you're not more successful? Right? Same with the people that join our team who ask them these questions. I would suggest that you take time to write down, what does success mean to you? And most of the time, had I not shared with you the differences, your successes would have been probably half of it would have counted by accomplishments. So I would suggest that you do that, right? For me, success is very different. It's about making a difference in people's lives. It's about having an incredible relationship with my wife and my kids. Um, I mean, self-growing, right? As a person, as a professional, living to my values. There's a whole list. I would encourage that you do the same for you. The same thing applies. The same thing applies for when you hire people, right? I would strongly suggest that when you interview a little bit deeper with individuals that come on your team to get an understanding, of what motivates them, right? Because once you know how they define success, you can help them. You can help them achieve that success, and you will enable you to have a better methodology of motivating and providing an environment where they can be successful, right? But if you ask this question, when you tell them how do you define success, you may find out that their ego is so big that all they want to do is just about them. I want to do this. I, right? So that's the reason why we asked this question, because we want to kind of gauge their ego. And God knows we have a lot of egos in clubs, right? Not only from the team side, but also from the member side. You just doesn't mean you shouldn't hire. You just want to know, going in with your eyes wide open, what you're dealing with, right? The challenge with people that want acknowledgement for all their successes is that in private clubs, you're probably not going to get it, right? I mean, look, sure, you may get thanked every now and then, but if you're looking for acknowledgement and credit for your work in private clubs, highly unlikely, highly unlikely. And this goes back to purpose versus function, right? If you're purpose driven, right, it doesn't matter who gets you credit. It really doesn't, right? It doesn't matter, because as long as you're fulfilling your purpose, accolades, attaboys are not as critical as those people that are always looking for accomplishments and pats on the back. So private clubs are not notorious for giving anyone credit, because in essence, we work best and we get more autonomy when we give the members credit for everything, right? So it's always a give credit to the team or to the membership. We're not going to get credit. And by the way, it's not about credit. It's about fulfilling our purpose. And as I say to my team, as club professionals, our job are very similar to Moses. Our job is to take the membership to the promised land, a place you and I will never enjoy. It's not about us. It's about them. We have to take them from point A to point B, right? A place that you and I will never enjoy. It's about them. So this is the question that I ask all the candidates and the search committees. As successful as you are, why are you not more successful? And for the clubs, the same thing. And the reason why I ask search committees this question, again, same thing. I want to gauge how strong is their ego. That's the reason why I do it. Speaking of ego, any questions? All right. So, this is probably one of those taboo things to talk about, but I can tell you that this was probably the single biggest reason why I had a pretty perilous start in the club industry, and why I think I was so distraught and struggled to begin with, is because it was my ego. And the reason why I had a big ego is because I did not have the training and the experience in food and beverage. Um, I felt so insecure about that, right? That I was coming into a profession where I had very little experience. And what I did is, my ego was my facade, my mask, to hide what I didn't know. And yes, I walked around. I remember walking around to this day on my first week at the club, and there was a piano towards the front, and I remember there was dust on it. So in front of a lot of other people, I kind of did this finger test on the dust to demonstrate that, oh, look at all this dust here right at the front. That's embarrassing. All those stuff that I did was really not adding any value. It was really unnecessary, but I did it to basically hide what I didn't know, and my ego was so inflated that it was causing me more problems. And I can tell you, in the 30 years that I've managed so many team members, I will tell you that it's probably one of the issues that I spend more time on with my team members than a lot of other things, other than personal stuff. Because some that have an ego um, don't see it as an ego. Others don't perceive that they have one. So dealing with one's ego is critical, as that I think it prevents you from making some serious mistakes. So why is this an issue? Look, people that and again, there's nothing wrong with having a healthy ego, right? But when your ego gets too big, what happens is we're so focused on working for brand name clubs, platinum club, rank clubs, right? I want to work at a club so and so. I want to be at a club that's more than 10 million. You know, and what happens is we're not really picking the right club that's a good fit for us. We're picking club because it'll look good on our resume. Um, we hire people that know exponentially less because, God forbid, they know more than me. It's going to make me look stupid, right? So we don't want that to happen. Um, we take things personally. People that have, for me especially, being an Eastern European, ego was part of the course. And, Eastern European, we don't take criticism easily. So we're not, this isn't a discussion or debate. Everything hurt exponentially more because I took it personally. Ego also steers you in the wrong direction, where you end up fighting battles that are unnecessary, right? It is not necessary, but what happens is, if you take things personally and it hurts your ego, you end up fighting battles you should not be fighting. Egos also demonstrate to the outside world that you're insecure, right? Because that's the reason why I did it. Insecurity also, it forces you to start to micromanage your team, because there's a lack of trust and you don't know, and you don't know who's saying what. You don't feel confident. So you're micromanaging everyone, just telling them what to do, following up on everything, and it's actually deteriorating morale. And more importantly, people with egos don't share much. They're not really good communicators, and God forbid they're transparent, right? But the challenge is this: the club world has gotten exponentially more complex. And to solve for complexity, it's not simplicity. You can't simplify complexity. You can try, but to solve for complexity, the solution is transparency, right? That's how you solve complexity. Is with your team, with your members, you have to be a little more transparent of what's happening, what you're doing, sharing more. Individuals with high egos, big egos, will not do that, because that's not what you do. Transparency, it goes flies in the face of your ego, right? It's about what you know, keeping others in the dark. So that's why you need to keep and get your ego in check. People with big egos, again, like me, did not admit my mistakes. It was never, ever my fault. Ever. It was always somebody else's. And when you don't admit mistakes, you rob yourself of learning opportunities. That's how we learn and we grow. We learn and we grow through our mistakes. The more mistakes we make, the more we learn. At Medina, my team, I have a very wide safety net. We encourage our team members, I encourage my team members to make mistakes because there's a safety net that's wide enough while we'll catch them. As I tell them, there's very few mistakes you can make that I cannot get you out of. Very, very, very few. So don't worry about it. Make make mistakes because that's how we grow. Try different things, right? But to do that, to allow your team members, you have to feel confident in yourself. You have to feel confident in them. And there has to be a amount of trust. The other issue is people with egos don't admit what they don't know. That was the turning around point for me. Following my episode with my father and reading that article, when I went to my next club, I sat the team down and I said, basically, look, I don't know this stuff. There's certain things that I'm really good at, and there's certain things I'm not. The good news is the things you guys are really good at, I need your help. The things that you may be a little weak on, I'm really good at, and I'll help you. And that's where I realized that if I surround myself by people that know exponentially more than me, and I come vulnerable and transparent with them on what I don't know, it's almost, it's remarkable what happens when you tell people what you don't know and you show a little bit of vulnerability. It's amazing how people will rally around you, right? Because genuinely people want to help you, but in return, they also want you to help them, right? So that's why for me, it was an incredible thing that when I shared this with my team years ago, how they rallied around me, and in return, I wanted to make them better people and better professionals. Very, very powerful stuff, right? Again, like I said, it's not about credit. It's not about credit. As club professionals, whether you're restaurant manager, GM, assistant GM, right? Your mission, your goal is to affect change. You have to improve the lives of the people you've been entrusted to serve, right? You should be more focused on effective change rather than getting a credit for it. Try it. The more you give credit to your president, your board, or your team, the more you give them credit, ironically, the more they will allow you to do more things, right? But what happens is we don't give credit to anybody. We want to get all the credit for it. Who cares? Who cares? Don't worry about the credit. Give the credit away because your priority number one is making sure that you affect change, positive change. It's not about who gets credit for it. Questions?
I have a question. So, oftentimes we have influencers at the club, and some of those you touched on just have contribution to someone's success or failure. What happens if one of those people are sort of alluding to more micromanaging style than a little more transparent or relaxed style?
So, if this is your boss,
Yeah, a boss or someone else who is a stakeholder for your success.
yeah, you know, uh, so what I try to find out is when I meet with these again, it's I think it was 88 in Hong Kong. I think it was 92 at Medina, right? The point of meeting with these individuals, and especially like this individual, is to understand a little bit about history and context. So the micromanaging, as you point out, is the outcome of something, right? There's a reason why that is. And so, yes, I mean, I've met with past presidents, I've met with my senior management team that are micromanagers. What's interesting is I don't address the micromanagement with past presidents or and it always happens to be CFOs. I don't know why. Um, but it's more about understanding where they come from, right? Tell me about the struggles. You've been here 5 years, 4 years, 10 years. Tell me, how was it? How was it back then? How is it now? What was the biggest difference you noticed in the club culture? You will, by asking questions and doing listening, you'll understand why is it that they're micromanaging, right? In my case, this happened twice with CFOs. It was that insecurity, right, of micromanaging, wanting, because these people didn't know what they were doing. If I don't look over the books, Robert, no one, this place will go down in flames. It was their own insecurity that caused them to micromanage everybody else. Now, past president, remember, the club had 17 GMs prior to my 16 prior to my arrival. I was club manager number 17. At 6 years or 5 years, I'm the second longest serving GM in the history of the club. So understanding why they are thinking the way they think, why do they act the way they do, is exponentially more important than how it's affecting everybody else. So my suggestion is talk to these person, get to know them on a deeper level, listen, ask really important questions, clarifying questions so they can open up. Once you understand the motivation behind their action, you can change that outcome. But telling a past president or one of your team leaders, say, look, starting today, new sheriff in town, no more micromanagement. I believe in openness. I believe, rarely works. Actually, it seldom works, right? You have to understand, again, going back to empathy, where do they come from? Why do they behave the way they behave? Make sense? Any, does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay. I learned this lesson early on in my career. I had a manager at one of my clubs who was tardy, notorious, late, right? Counseling, right? This is the club I went to yacht club before I got my 360, because we don't tolerate tardiness around here. We're a super organization. At the time, I was a big Welch fan, right? 20% they go, the rest climb to the top, kind of thing. And after counseling, we ended up letting her go. We documented evidence. A week and a half later, a member came to see me and informed me that he says, I can't believe what you did to her. I said, what do you mean? She came late every week. I mean, this has been going on way before I even got here. He said, did you ever ask her why she was late? No. She has a sick child at home. She's a single mother. Did you ever care to ask? I said, no, I didn't. I learned early on. That's when I say, if there's something seems like a no-brainer, nothing's a no-brainer. Never again have I made the same mistake, ever, right? Always, by getting to understand the people, getting to understand your team, spending more time with the people around, goes back to understanding not what they're doing, right? It's why are they doing what they're doing? Like to retrace our steps and bring her back. And I felt like an idiot, and I was an idiot, right? So please take the time to understand, to get to know your team members. Finally, look, you got to master your craft. You really have to master your craft. I can tell you, our jobs are becoming more and more demanding. People are expecting more, and rightfully so, right? For those of you who wanted to be CEO like me, well, we got it, okay? But guess what? People are getting to understand that in our business, we get paid relatively well. And now other people want our jobs. I mean, you pick ones, right? You got the young people coming through the ranks who want your job. You got PGR America, who's teaching the general management classes. Superintendents are coming in, executive chefs. I mean, we got a CMC who's done an incredible job of leading an organization through change, right? CFOs want it. You got management companies that are taking over. The latest trend, hoteliers are coming in at a rapid pace, right? If you look at some of the larger clubs that have been taken over, they're hotel folks, right? So the field is now exponentially opened up. The competition is getting greater. So what do you do? What do? You have to master your craft, right? You can complain about it. I was at an argument with my friends. We were at a restaurant, 10 of them, and they were all complaining about how everybody at PGA now is going to come into our world and take us over. Well, I said, really? I mean, how is that going to help us at all? You can complain all you want. But at the end of the day, you basically have to take the self-assessment to understand what is it that you do know, what is it that you don't know. The challenge is that the skills that got us to the position that we are today, wherever you are, may not be the same skill set that's going to be required to take you to the next step, right? It's a different skill set. So whatever made you to be successful superintendent, executive chef, it's an entirely different skill set to be the GM, right? So you got to sharpen the saw, learn, master that craft to be even more successful. That's what you should be doing, right? If you don't have it, surround yourself with people that have it. Surround yourself with people that have the skill set, the knowledge that you don't, right? You have to be honest. That's how you build trust in an environment where people thrive and they're willing to take risks. Be honest with them. Surround yourself with people that know exponentially more than you do. So my advice, if you're starting out, in the club industry, I would strongly encourage you to not look at clubs alone, not to look at recognition of those clubs, platinum clubs, whatever they are. I think it would be a mistake. I'm not saying that you shouldn't look at great clubs, but great clubs are only bricks and mortar. It's just a building. That's it, right? It's just a building. It doesn't mean anything. Don't be worried about what you want to look at is you want to look at GMs, right? Not all GMs are the same. Different GMs are different levels of their career, right? Some are operators, some are great mentors, some are not. It doesn't matter. Find a place, find a person who will be responsible for mentoring you. Does that person have a history of mentoring? Does that person have a documented evidence of demonstrating care, right, for people going through the ranks? It's the person, not the club. There's a reason why executive chefs and superintendents follow executive chefs and they follow superintendents, whatever the club they go to, because they're smart. They follow leaders. They follow people, right? They don't, the restaurant's the restaurant. It's just a facade, right? So find out who's going to be responsible. For the GMs and COs, I really would encourage you to take a 360, perform a 360 yourself to get a baseline on where you are. If there's any shortcomings, you'll see them, right? If you don't have a mentor coach, find one. Find one. When I had my most difficult time, I called Kevin McDonald, who was a coach through CMA. He flew out. We spent 3 hours together to walk me through things. I have another coach that I talked to help me to kind of bounce ideas from. Everybody needs a mentor or a coach. Find one to help you. Finally, be vulnerable, right? I know it's hard for many people, but a little bit of vulnerability goes a long way. And ultimately, look, it requires a lot of work. Everybody is in love with achieving greatness. Everybody is. But they're not in love with what it takes to get there because it requires work. Requires work. So we're very proud of everything we do at clubs, right? We spend millions building things, right? And we're so proud of all that stuff. But eventually, who cares? I can tell you that when you're done, nobody cares about how much money you spent or what you built, because the members will not care. They're going to forget. But focusing on your staff, focusing on your team, demonstrating servant leadership, right? Improving their lives, they're going to remember that long after you're gone, because that's what people remember, is how you have impacted their lives. It's not about the greens, the new Billy bunkers, not the new pool. Nobody gives a shit. They really don't, because they're going to forget things from now. But the people you touch, you've been empowered. You've signed up for leadership. That's why you're here. You improve their lives, make a positive impact in their life, right? And they will remember that. It's not about the posters in the in-play locker room that says motivation, teamwork, right? Those posters don't mean jack. Those posters are effective as Lululemon pants are on people that never practice yoga, right? So forget about the posters. Tangible evidence, improve their lives, especially your team. So this is it. Do these look familiar to you? This is not the answer. It is absolutely not the answer, right? You have to demonstrate it, not just have symbolism of it. My suggestion to you is you go to your team and you basically make a commitment that I made to my team. If you're not a better professional and a better person because of my presence, I have failed you. Every year I have to ask them the same question, and they got to tell me the honest truth. Thank you.
Awesome presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've gotten a couple of people commenting to me directly, others, couple right in the chat, but really appreciate. I haven't gotten any more questions. I'll just give it, I guess, another 30 seconds if anyone would like to ask a question of Robert before he departs. Really good stuff.
Great.
Thank you. And as I said to you before we started, you're welcome to stick around and listen to Chef and GM McFadden here. But thanks again for your time. Thanks for all of your contribution and influence in the industry. I know you and I have exchanged emails about the 360 reviews and the balanced scorecard. So when you and I connect and have some update on that, I'll be happy to share it with the rest of the chapter.
Absolutely. I'll send you some more documents that you can share with everyone. So
okay, great.
Yeah, thank you for
McFadden, CMC ECM. Lawrence has extensive experience leading world-class organizations. He was hired in his current role as the general manager and chief operating officer of the Union Club in 2015. Prior to this appointment, he assumed global roles in Singapore and Hong Kong, enhancing his professional growth of world-class hospitality on the Asian continent. His career includes leadership positions with Ritz-Carlton, the MGM, the Greenbrier, Waldorf Astoria, and other prestigious establishments. These mobile five-star experiences align perfectly with membership desires. He was an executive chef before transitioning to the general manager position. Lawrence is a visionary leader, principal expert, and innovator, continuing to challenge himself in all phases of the hospitality industry. With strong professional diversity, he has positioned himself as an asset for all companies he's worked with. Lawrence's strength lies in his ability to identify trends, develop a team focus, while balancing the reality of business and the costs associated. With a relentless drive for best-in-class results, he provides an impressive list of professional references. A journey of complex opportunities has defined his unique 30-year career. He's a certified master chef, one of only 2 professionals nationally to hold this accreditation while working as a general manager, COO in the private club sector. For professional influence, he presents nationally as an industry expert while advocating a lifestyle of health and wellness. He's the only general manager to win the Mel Rex Award as National GM of the Year, while also holding the Certified Master Chef Award in the history of both awards. It is a privilege to learn from you today, Lawrence. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks, Matt and Sally in the chapter. Welcome, and thank you for taking the time out of your hectic schedules to be with me today. I would say that by even putting leadership on my PowerPoint might be really interesting, because there's probably 3,000 leadership books produced in the United States annually. So the definition of leadership, and I think Mr. Robert Sereci really did a beautiful job with some of those. I'm going to focus a lot on food and beverage. That's kind of my sweet spot, and my relationships with the unique areas of the club as a general manager, also as an executive chef. So if we look at it, in the bottom right-hand corner is some logos. This one is Chifu China, and I've had the opportunity to gain some wisdom in my travels. So you'll see different pieces here to show you kind of some of the wisdom that's been created over the 30 years that I've been privileged to be associated with. It's a great industry. You know, I think if it's simply reading the tea leaves, one of the things I learned when I was in Hong Kong and with the Chinese was really to pause and reflect, listen with meaning, and speak less, which is, I'm sure some of you will smile, but you know, we could all benefit from perhaps just listening and seeking to understand a little bit. And they found those in the tea leaves, which was really interesting. This was a journey to Tibet that I took, to the Patala Palace, where the Dalai Lamas are located. I have a really simple mission. This is my personal mission: health, physical, wellness, mental, provider, self and family, lifetime learner, and then spiritual and a higher power. The responsibility, it's interesting, when I talk to young managers, I ask, what's your mission and who's your tribe? Tell me about your tribe, tell me about your mission. I find sometimes that we get into a profession or a business and we really don't know who we are. As I get older, probably when I was a young 30-year-old, I didn't have to worry as much, but keeping a health and wellness, and then provider. This is the reinvention that we're going to talk about a little bit. Wharton School of Business tells their graduates that they're going to have to relearn their profession every 4 to 7 years in a career. I would say that that's very accurate. I think we have probably an economic downturn every 7 years. If many of you are experienced people, you remember when we invaded Iraq, you remember when we had the meltdown for the housing crisis, you know 9/11, and now we're in a pandemic. And I'm just waiting for 7 more years for something else that's going to come about. And that's the reality of life. So Wharton was right on when they said, you better reinvent yourself and you better recreate what the experience is in your own educational value to the organizations. Here was a trip to Nepal. My personal mantra to both the members, the board, and the employees is I seek your greatest good and I mean no harm. Sometimes I would be in very difficult asset meetings around the world, and there would be some very difficult business people across the table from me, and I would scribe this on the top of my notepad to understand the greater good of what we were really doing. Profitability was important, but do I seek your greatest good and do I mean you no harm? And this is great for young leaders that work for me because I can be quite a taskmaster in the process, but if they know that I mean them no harm and that it's always professional, it goes a long ways for us in creating the culture of trust that we've been able to do here after 48 years of a club. The agenda today, I'd like to talk a little bit about professional statement. I'd like to talk a little bit about a professional mantra, creating culture, leadership, executive chef, and that relationship, because that's a very complex relationship, as you would guess. Having been a chef, who do you get to work for you? And I really want to spend some time on that because it's really a novelty for GMs to understand that person. Luxury customers, I'm sure all of you have heard this relentlessly, but there's some interesting things. Menu trends, professional migration, marketing, and data, and so forth like that. The most interesting thing, and I was working with Paul Prudhomme in my early career, and Paul said, you know, Lawrence, food is a very powerful emotion. And many of you probably are smiling coming off Mother's Day that while the food was very good, it was sitting with mom and the memories of sitting with mom or the generational families that really made the item taste even better. Or you go home and the refrigerator has the same food that had three days ago when you were looking for something different in the process. And so people think more earnestly about their lunch than anything else. One of the things that I've tried to do with the committees and the boards is to meet over lunch. Use lunch and food and beverage as a platform to share experiences and business. Not only does that drive revenue with the club, but it puts a smile on their face because while they're eating, they're enjoying something. They're enveloping their senses, their 5 senses, and so forth. And maybe news, good news, bad news, or indifference doesn't sound as good or bad or drastic if they're really enjoying something that they're eating. And we have to remind often the board and the committees that we are in the hospitality industry. But this is a want, not a requirement in life. Club membership is a want, it's a desire, it's a value proposition, but nobody has to have this in their life. So if we don't position as a general manager the value proposition of the emotion of food, we might be missing a key opportunity. Creating culture. So culture, in a sense, is style descriptions, what managers consider important by the way of collective spending their time and attention. Peter Drucker suggests that leaders ask, what is the task or why do it, but not how it's done. Why? Ask the question why 5 times is what he would say. They must be the trumpet that sounds a clear sound. Their beliefs. And it's interesting, the components. And I think every one of our clubs have this. And then I'll get into this. But beliefs and components of organizational culture are norms, accepted behaviors, history and tradition, the historical tradition way of doing things and thinking. I have 148 years. How do I move that ship? How do I enhance and make things fun? How do I make 35-year-old but respect a 75-year-old? Myths. All of our clubs have great myths. myths of previous general managers, myths of presidents, myths of unique members, or myths of the architectural shaping of that. But common stories or folklores passed from one generation to another. Every one of you probably inherited a good 10% of your membership that they were like, well, you want to talk to, and they used them by Mr. and Mrs., and you knew it. Those were myths, and sometimes they were fact afterwards. Mores, customs and rituals. All of us have customs and rituals and cultures. And art and artifacts, symbols and so on that are physical and representative of the culture. I always have this on my desk because I don't want to forget who we are. Are we time that stood still? That's for someone else to decide. I'm here to make sure that the stewardship of the club moves forward. Do people need to eat with silver? And do they need to eat with a tablecloth? And do they need to eat with a candelabra? That's not for me to discuss. Mine is to make sure that they've got great food, great service, complete engagement. We hug them, or we're an oasis for their problems. Problem resolution is executed perfectly. Innovation happens through the programming. And I don't get caught up in the dress codes and all the other things that come along with the mores, the myths, or the artifacts in the process. Culture of excellence for a professional, industry involvement, collaborative, and educator. Every one of the members and every one of the leaders that are in my team are required to certify themselves on an annualized basis in some form of certification. Keep involved in the industry with memberships, just as all of you have done with the CMAA in the process. But my young people, I'm building a culture of fraternal interest in CMAA or the ACF and certification and the growth, because if you don't move forward in education, you will be left behind. Employee promise, we have a culture of an employee promise, mentor, trusted, and respected. We spend more time on the employees than we spend on the members sometimes because they spend all of their heart with the members. Our members have told us the last 3 years, I don't know what you've done, Lawrence, but I've never felt better at the club. What they can't describe is that the employees are doing it from their heart, but they're also doing it because they can make the decision at the point of contact. If someone is not happy with something, take it off their bill. If someone needs something, fix it. If somebody wants something, you run down to the store and you get it. You make the decision at the point of contact. There is no SOP. There is no, I've got to check with Mr. McFadden to see if it's okay. There is no, let's go check with the controller because financially we might not be able to do that. There is really nothing somebody has asked us to do that would put us into a really pressing situation. Pressed mindful, meaning that we're mindful and accurate and thoughtful with the press, making sure that our marketing brand is gone out and it goes out in a very unique way. Many of us, unfortunately, have to stay out of the public eye. We can't aggressively go after membership, nor should we. We cannot actually do a call to action for reservations in events in many cases, but we can do what we call subliminal marketing. A call to action is not there with reservations and numbers, but we can make people feel the brand. The Tiffany box is a perfect example. Nobody has to describe that color. We see that, we know it. And that's how we're trying to do with our press mindful and making sure that we don't put anything out there. Press mindful inside, all pictures of club members are asked in advance so that Mr. and Mrs. Smith standing together at a cocktail party are truly Mr. and Mrs. Smith. That we are making sure that their privacy is intact. We try not to catch them in a picture where they're eating or drinking because we don't know where they've been or what they've done. Community visibility, public and private. So not only is the club really involved in the community, but the ladies and gentlemen of the staff are involved in the visibility, public and private. The general manager on down. A social sense of product sourcing and stance. Now, I think all of us would agree that something that's called organic could really be, and we've seen enough Netflix films to realize that organic really doesn't mean anything other than what's printed on the box. We do try to support the local community. We try to support the local farmers. And we also co-brand with a spin center or a local restaurant or so forth, and do field trips with our members in different areas of business to grow the business in the local communities. And then we're disciples of local, national, and global. So what the club represents locally should represent that of national, and then should be locally, globally acceptable as well. And I think what you understand in that between the lines are some of our practices in the past. If you're dealing with a club like I have, some of our past history has not always been very kind to certain groups of people and or customers and or members. And so we have to make sure we're disciples of moving forward some of our norms, myths, and mores forward with, and as a general manager, I have a responsibility to tell the board what I think might be, because we hear some of that in the hallways of our own club. We're ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen, and that's how I look at the staff when we build the culture. This is a bit of a tongue-in-cheek, but if you want something new, you have to stop doing something old. And we entered into a Talent Plus selection process. It's nothing new. Many of you are doing DNA. Many of you are doing Myers-Briggs. We used to, and it was cute, we were talking about getting ready for the national conference, and they wanted to talk to us about, do you want to talk about staffing? And I said, you know, for staffing for 30 years, that's a generational opportunity or a problem, depending on how you want to propose it. I've never been short-staffed. Now, do I always have enough people? No. But am I short-staffed? No. I select people. I don't hire. I'm not drastically looking for. I'm looking for the right people. And we start with Talent Plus, and we select based on natural skills. I am not a great interviewer, so within 5 minutes, they've told me right away, if you are pleasant, if you're engaging, because I'm an introvert, if you have Googled me and you want to throw, you're probably going to make me feel good about myself. And so then I'm going to find every reason within the first 5 minutes of liking you to justify why I want to hire you. But we go an extra step and look at the natural skills, because the interview process is only one piece of the pie. So we go through it and we evaluate it. And I believe that this has really been the success that our members are talking about when they say, everybody wants to help me, Lawrence. Everybody has my best interest in mind. Everybody is engaged with my needs. Everybody has a good problem resolution. Everybody understands their roles. When they tell me these things, it tells me that I've selected the right people, and I've used this computer analysis to let me know that I've built a team with all the right skills. And there are 10 characteristics. Many of you are using these types of selection tools, but I think that's part of the culture. I would never say that I was in charge of culture. I would say that I am the ambassador of culture, leading by example, but we're using various tools in the process. Executive leadership super qualities that we look for: vision, mission, morality, recruiter. If an executive chef is not a natural recruiter, you're always going to hear as a general manager, I can't find anybody. There's nobody that wants to work this way. I can't find the person who wants to work like they used to. Nobody wants to work the hours. Nobody wants to work for the hours. But if the executive chef has a strong recruiter, Talent Plus, he's going to look at opportunities like, what a great environment we have. What is this? Where am I going to find these people? How am I going to balance my team together? I look for risk takers, myself included. If you don't take a risk, you're never going to know what the potential is. Persuasion. I can convince almost anybody of anything, and I need my ladies and gentlemen to be able to persuade each other, themselves, in the process of following us and making sure that we're all moving as a team. Consensus builder. I'm a very good taskmaster and I can stop it. We try to take I out of everything that we're doing. Because I would say, as general managers, you've probably heard enough I at your board meetings and at all of your committee meetings where most of your members start with I. If we start with I, then why are we supposed to be the expert? We're just another opinion. High emotional intelligence, being able to read when we've made mistakes, when I've upset somebody, when the team. We look at these executive super qualities when we look at hiring executive chef, controller, marketing, membership, admissions, fitness, general manager in the process. One of the things that we don't even discuss is ethics. All of us treasure our own brands. We must treasure the brand of the club. If somebody slips and it's an ethical or a moral situation, there's really no discussion. Unfortunately, it has to be a decision in the best interest of the brand. When it comes to members, unfortunately, it just goes to the board in the process. But I think enough said, that's probably pretty clear. I grew up in the kitchen, and I grew up with, first I worked for the Germans, then I worked for the French, then I worked for the Mandarins. And I never worked for the Americans. The American chef is really a new novelty. So I started my career in '82, and the young executive American chef has just been the last 20 years or so. So I got my formal education for the Europeans in the process. And Gordon Ramsay was probably a great example in Hell's Kitchen, which is very unfortunate for us as executive chefs today. But there certainly was a beating that took place. Those are past employee perceptions and ones that unfortunately as chefs we're really trying to change. The most unique thing about an executive chef is it's really black and white. The product is either right or it's wrong, and you can make a decision in a 5-second pass as to convince. It's like smelling something that's a little off. If you smell it a second or a third time, it doesn't smell so bad. But that first time you're like, oh, this is sour, and you throw it away. Well, that's really the perception that we deal with in the past is the executive chef knows exactly what's right or wrong in the kitchen. The gray area comes with his delivery. The gray area comes with the customer. The gray area comes with the environment or the misunderstanding. So excellence in communication is paramount. And I would like to believe that communication in the kitchens has improved. The best executive chefs are the ones that truly understand the complexity of the gray, which is the customer, understanding that the customer actually changes every SOP and every process. And the executive chef doesn't have that customer in his way, but he has to understand that that's the reality and that the front of the house isn't really just making up some of these things. The deconstruction and the allergens and so forth that we'll talk about aren't just made up. They're actually real live scenarios. And the more that the general manager it can communicate and experience. So when a member has a challenge, which isn't very often with our culinary product, thank God, I have the chef handle it. I have the chef call the member. And I'll say, chef, do me a favor, call the member and talk to him. And each time they get off the phone, they've built a better relationship and a better understanding of what really happens out front. Misunderstandings, timing, portion, value in the process. And that's about the best I can do as far as that. Turnover, we have a gentleman in our kitchen. I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about inappropriateness. I don't have to worry about profanity, but those fall into ethics and morals. And unfortunately, some of our best talent artisans weren't always the kindest people. And unfortunately, you have to make those decisions sometimes. But the kitchen has come a long ways from where we were before. Um, but we still have an awareness that I think can always be important. And the executive chef is on our executive committee for that reason, so that he can hear the strategies that we have as the club grows. The executive chef's responsibilities and roles, not job description. This is how I see it. Strategic partner, customer, owner, and employees. They're a strategic partner. They're not a cook. They're not an artisan. They're not an artist. They're not standalone. They're not a dictator. They're a strategic partner. They have to do their own strategic plans. They have to do all of their own things. They're a principal expert. That's what I hire them for yesterday, today, and tomorrow. They must keep up with what's going on. Thing that I shared with the board when I gave the salary range to my CMC and a Michelin star chef, and the board said to me, Lawrence, why do we pay this? We're paying double what we paid in the past. What's he going to do for us? I said, okay. So we did a small little dinner, and they all liked the scallops. And they were perfectly sweet like candy, and they caramelized perfectly because they were dry packed, and they were silky smooth, and they had a little bite to them. And I said, these came from XYZ vendor in the Northeast. Do you know that vendor only sells to 25 chefs nationally, and our chef is one of them? There's a fraternity that you're buying when you buy an executive chef that's expensive and is a consummate professionals. Vendors rely on that person. They know that if they hand over their babies, whether that be lamb, beef, scallops, vegetables, as one farmer said to me in Ocala, I'm going to give you my babies, Lawrence, as he interviewed my kitchen to see how they were cared for. These vendors have a choice. And your executive chef must be in that channel of expertise. So that's what I mean by principal expert, not who went to the ACF conference, who has the best recipe, but are they viewed as a principal expert in the industry? They're a brand extension. How they look, how they act, where they go, they're a brand extension. They must be outside. They must be visible. They must be in the dining rooms. They must be outside at the pool. They must be clean, sharp, and meticulous. We don't need to see the soup on the front of the uniforms on any of the cooks. It's not an individualized session. They should all look together as a fraternity, but they should be a brand extension of how I'm dressed. They should be. There's nothing more disappointing than seeing a beautiful maitre d' in a coat and tie, and then all of a sudden the cook comes through and he looks like he's working down at the diner. They must be a communicator internally and externally, making sure that they are communicating externally as well as internally. Communicating externally means being involved in community colleges, being involved with apprenticeships, being involved with associations. Data decision delegator and a taskmaster. We don't do anything without looking at the sales report. Every one of you have the Murray salad in my case. The Murray salad really has very little culinary value in our world, except for the fact that it's the #1 value proposition for my membership. And so we will keep it because it is a combination of Thousand Island and Louis and Russian dressing with tossed iceberg, with some type of relish out of a can, with something else. And it's a conglomerate of lovely different things, but the members love it. And so chef, leave it alone and move on to something else in the process, because the data says that it sells. And we must look at the data. Chef, I need you to be a businessman and an artisan. I need you to make sure that the menu is balanced in the process. And we can all ask these and actually demand these of our ladies and gentlemen, if we are strategic, and that's why he's a strategic partner, number one. He must understand that sales drives satisfaction and the accuracy and the identification of those. Certification, MD, MBA, PhD, law. Certification is the kryptonite to this statement. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, anybody can hang a shingle and call themselves a chef. That's unfortunate, but it's the reality. I guess somebody can call themselves a doctor, but it's going to be uncovered after a while in the process. So if there isn't certification, how do you stand with your members who have MBAs, PhDs, law degrees, medical degrees? How do I stand with them as a professional if I don't have a PhD, if I don't have a CMC, if I don't have a bachelor's? How do I sit arm to arm and consider myself an expert? So chefs have to be certified in the process. It's the least they can do. And while they might say the value is, well, anybody can be certified, what does certification do for me? How can education hurt anyone's ability to grow? The chef's value proposition, established fraternity of excellence, we talked about that with the fact that they are in a fraternity of excellence. We just started a sushi bar. The number one sushi restaurant is by a fellow that is a very, very prominent chef in the area. Well, our chef and him work for Gray Coons in Washington at Les Venas. So what does chef do? He calls up Dante, says, hey, Dante, on Thursday, we're doing a sushi bar. Do you have a sushi chef that could help us? We'll pay him, we'll take care of him. Yes. We're buying a fraternity of excellence. If you're not in a fraternity of excellence, then you've lost out on the opportunity in the local area. They are a mentor of technical proficiency. Chef knows what to do with sea urchin. He knows how to yield the best product in the meat. He knows what to do with the product. So you can put rabbit on your menu, but if the chef doesn't know exactly what temperature to cook that rabbit, you've just got a dry mess on the plate. So he mentors technical proficiency, global ethnicity exposure. Our chef, thank goodness, is not only speaks 5 languages, but he's worked around the world. So when I have a member from somewhere else in the world, he can speak to them from Shanghai where he worked, or Egypt where he worked, or London where he worked, or myself in the same cases. Educated professional, educating them, language of quality. Language of quality is putting together a world-class, sensible menu. That is his language of quality. And then business-centric. Can we make money? My chef tells me more often that we're underpriced than anybody else in the business. And I say, chef, it's a balance. It's a dance. Don't worry about this. We run about, just so if anybody wants to know, after all of this wonderful stuff with a Michelin star chef, we run about a 41% food cost. We run about a 32 to 28% food cost in catering on a good season. So we have a balance, and we probably lose a touch in the a la carte. I think some of you probably are familiar with that in the process. So we're not sitting here at 50% or 60% or 75% food cost. He's very, very mindful. But I say, chef, do you understand that we also add plus, so I have to educate him on taxes and gratuities and all. So do you understand? I always talk, chef, about what is the final in the day, for the day price at the bottom of the ticket? Can I afford to go back? It's not the price individually of $24 for the salmon. It's the $55 at the bottom. Can somebody afford to come back, and do they see value in that process? I chose in 2006 to leave the kitchen. I was the corporate chef of Ritz-Carlton, and I thought, if I am only going to make a certain amount of monetary value here, how am I going to afford my daughter's college? So I made a decision to move out. And so my old vision was culinary vision and solo department. My new vision became strategic vision. And I'm a member of the board of people that and oversee the affairs of the business. I sit on the board. I look at the club as my own business. As a matter of fact, some of the board members ask me not to be quite so entrepreneurial. Um, but I'm paid to take care of a business that is a hobby to them. Um, and they should enjoy their club and they should feel comfortable. But I made the transition because I wanted to be challenged at another level in the process. The relationship between the chef and the general manager, trust, unconditional support, working with my friends and creating excellence. When people ask me, why do you come to work, Lawrence? I come to work to be with my friends first, and then I come to create excellence number two. Horst Schulze said that as the president of Ritz-Carlton, and I thought, if I could achieve that, that's pretty daggone good. The chef, be there before them, have data, move fast, stay relevant. Those are my four things I always share with the chef. Be there before them, anticipate problems, taste the soup, check the temperatures, be there before it becomes a trend for me. I had a board member the very first week I started said, Lawrence, my coffee was cold in the Wedgwood room. Many of you probably have sat at a board meeting like that. And I said, Mrs. XYZ, do you take cream or sugar in your coffee? She said, why do you ask? I said, because that will tell me the temperament and the temperature of your coffee. I don't know what means cold to you in the process. If 5 people tell me, then I've got a problem and I've got to look at it. If it's an individual preference in the process. Some take it black, some people like it scalding, some people make it flat white, some people make a cappuccino or a, so how do you take your coffee will tell me a lot about whether the temperature is right. If she said I'm a black coffee drinker, good chance probably we might need to want to look at the pots, the cups, or the machinery. But she took it with cream and sugar. Probably a chance at how many times do you stir it? You know, so it's a funny thing. I didn't ask her all those things, but those are the things that went through my mind. If I tell my chef to do something and he does it, I don't need him. I need to influence him. I only need to influence him. Now, that takes a lot of patience because I want things done and I want to take care of it for the members. But chef, I'm not happy with the bread basket. Would you take a look at it? As opposed to chef, I want 4 varieties. I want these. I want that thrown away and I want that remade. I can't do that. You know why? Because I will not get perfection if I tell him, or I'm not going to be surprised and delighted at his creativity if I told him to do something. So he says, fine, I put that in there. You didn't tell me that. And if you go down that road of telling people what to do, so everybody calls everybody a leader, but then they want to micromanage in the process. I try to influence. Now, there are people down a little lower that I don't maybe always just ask them. I will challenge them and say, please fix this. Ethics, morals, food safety, food handling, we don't talk about those things in the process. Have data, chef. Chef, don't tell me you put it on the menu because you like it. I really need to know whether it's going to sell. Move fast, meaning the menus need to change. And then stay relevant. But relevant, I let the chef play with 1/3 of the menu and 2/3 of it stays the same. A great menu probably only changes a 1/5 of the menu. Every one of us have those places that we go to because that item never changes. The club should have some of those benefits. Change too often, and you've upset a whole nother group of people. So I'll stop right there for a second. That was a lot about the kitchen and the chef. If there are any questions at this point, Matt.
Yeah, there was one question that came in, and it relates to the oversight of a full food and beverage operation. Have you seen success in having an executive chef also as the director of food and beverage in clubs, or are you familiar with that? And what are your thoughts on how successful that can be?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in 2006, Marriott went to Chef and B, especially in their smaller ones. Um, for unique people. So let me go back and tell you that the chef doesn't even know what to wear when he shows up at work. And that's a funny one. But you know, I used to feel like a Marvel character when I wore the chef's jacket. I felt great in it. When I moved to a coat and tie, I was just one more suit. People didn't even look at me special. Members, guests, just walked by me. So understand that with a chef, he doesn't even know how to arrive at work because which uniform does he wear? So he's doing 50% of both of the items and he's doing them pretty much 50% in effectiveness. It's a good cost saving measure. I would have to see a unique situation where it might always work. Then you've got to really look at what does he or she do well? I would start with an executive qualifier in Talent Plus to find out whether or not they have the things that they want to do and be there. Succession planning is tough because you've got a lot of executive chefs saying they want to be food and beverage directors. Okay. So are you practicing those skills already while you're in the white jacket? So it's a real bumpy conundrum there in the process. My experience has been to put an assistant general manager with a really strong food and beverage, or in my case, I always put somebody who's opposite of me. So my assistant was really strong in club management, membership, admissions. I had food and beverage kind of covered up in the process. Although I spend more time in marketing, and we'll talk about that. I spend no time in the kitchen, just in case people are curious. I don't even go in the kitchen. If I'm going in the kitchen, I've got a bigger issue. I've got somebody better than me in the kitchen, and that's how it should be in the process. So it's done. It's a cost savings move. It's a succession plan. I don't know if it's a good general rule. It's just two different norms. I don't know if that answers it. I apologize.
Great, thank you. One other question, you touched on it a little bit there, but how have you been able to remove yourself from your experience in culinary operations and take over the GM role with a equally talented chef in that position?
Yeah, so first and foremost, you hire quality. So I have such confidence in the person that I don't have to worry about it and I don't have to second guess. And I don't have to listen to the members say, Lawrence, when are you going to? The paradigms are very difficult for a chef. If any of you are a general manager, I remember the board saying, well, you know, during the transition, because we did make a transition when I came after 2 years, they said, Lawrence, you can jump back there if you want to, right? I mean, you could go back there if you needed to, right? And I'm like, sure, I can certainly do that. I don't think you want that, and I certainly don't want that. I have the black grouper scenario, and that was I cooked in South Florida when I worked for Ritz. I had cooked all the black grouper I ever wanted to in the rest of my life. If I never see another grouper sandwich, it will be fine. But my customer never got tired of eating that grouper sandwich. So I knew it was time to leave and go into a different area. So you hire the best, you leave them alone, you inspire them and you influence them, and you speak with very, very strong data and reasoning. I am the voice of the customer, or in this case, the member, for all of my leaders. I just speak the voice of the customer. But I had trouble even finding a job as a general manager because I had become such an expert in food and beverage that they couldn't understand why I would want to handle the additional challenges that go on in an organization in the process. So it's easy for me to hire a chef because I completely understand the paradigm upon which they've been placed.
Great, thank you.
So if we look at the luxury customer, in this case, the member, there are some norms. So let's talk first about emerging customers, and that this isn't the slide, but I've got some talking points. And every one of you can really relate to this. More casual in dress and behavior. Recently, I was on a website in a club in Chicago, downtown City Club, and the quote is that denim I see on the front of their website, meaning that they are denim friendly now in downtown Chicago. Pandemic has casualized the worker. For the city clubs, my members who are coming to join the club right now haven't been in their offices in sometimes 8 or 10 months. So they're coming from home on Zoom. So it's become a little more casual. We're remarkably busy and live a stress-filled lives. Wealth brings on more stress, work, family, taking care of family members. Technology has allowed people to add more to their lives. Multitasking is enjoyed, yet being unplugged is desired. Keeping up with the Joneses on steroids. So what we try to do is understand that they're busy, and we try to customize how we talk to them and what we do, and the speed. The speed of service can't be fast enough. And I know general managers, you say that to your kitchen all the time. One, because you probably maybe don't really want to be at the table that you're having a lunch or a dinner with. But the fact of the matter is, speed is the currency. Technology, internet has pushed that forward. Our members are seeking sanctuary from the outside of the world. We call our club an oasis, so that when they've had 3 bad experiences, whether it be service, professional, or personal, when they come into the Union Club and they open the doors, we put our arms around them in a sense. We engage them, we recognize them, and we take care of them in the process. Technology savvy. No longer I can't program my VCR. For me, Zoom was a nightmare during the pandemic. It was my biggest dissatisfier because it had so many people playing in Zoom. High level of personal service, schedules are tight, so speed is the currency we talk about. All I talk to Chef about is moving the food faster. Get the food out as fast as possible, Chef. So when menu creation. The luxury core customer or member super norms are DIY, involve me, unique experience, time is my currency, sensual descriptors, authentic on my terms, Uber, organized, and repeatable experiences. When I talk to my members about a grab and go, I always show them this picture. I've been asking for a grab and go in our area, and what they had in mind was a Starbucks, and I said, here's my grab and go. So creating a vision for them in the process, and this was a true grab and go that we built in Berlin, Germany, in one of our restaurants. Here is probably the biggest challenge, and that is that 4 people are sitting at the table and 4 have views, social views. Son is organic, father is meat and potato, grandfather is meat and potatoes, daughter is macrobiotic, granddaughter is vegan. Welcome to the chef and to the general manager's new generation of, and then let's add allergies, fair trade, ethnics, diet fads, clean food, paleo, and gluten, and whatever else they've read about in the latest magazine. And this is a table of 4 sitting in your restaurant. It's a unique, but you have to be aware of this. That's all you need to do is be aware of this. Here are the descriptors. I don't know if every one of you have heard this, but it seems as though to get people's attention today that the descriptors of food, the descriptors of their experience has to be higher than ever before. Not the server was bad, he was horrible, ghastly. What about me? Then there's some other ones that are really interesting to die for. Dumped salt on it, not a little too salty. It seems as though the descriptors in life have gone to a steroids level. So I always tell my presidents, please understand that what they're saying probably is about 5% of the actuality. They just want to make sure they get their point across to me. One woman told me I had stolen 2 hours of her life because lunch was a little slow. Okay, that's fine. You know, how could sitting with somebody at a club, but that's okay. Children are following that. They have the same beliefs expected with their menus as well. So the little people are learning from the older people, and they're deconstructing their menus in process. These are all trends, and these trends are going to stay. I'm not finding fault in them. I'm saying if I don't have a strategy, if I'm not there first, then I am going to make my life miserable because I'm not addressing these things as they believe. Plan for deconstruction, allergen, trends, diets, and fads. Plan for these things. Anticipate these with the construction of the menu. I always say, put a smile on your face. I served this at a board meeting, and they made fun of me in the process, but it's scrambled eggs with gold leaf and a little caviar and toast. And I told them, just dream a little bit. My board should be research and development. This is where I should be able to play. Now, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I had a full buffet right behind the boardroom so that they could all get up and really fill their plates. But this is what they arrived to. And it was an interesting experience. Menu migration, aging clientele, quality ingredients, dishes, deconstruction, diets, foodies. So menus are migrating, menus are changing, menus are moving around significantly. We need to be aware of those. Architectural storyboards. I tell chef, traditional events, menus, auspicious dates, comfort zones, guest speakers. He and I plan out the entire year of 12 months together. Where can he play? Where does he need to stay traditional? If I take the shrimp and the tenderloin off of a certain party, chef, you don't understand. It doesn't matter about the other 35 items you have there. This is what they're looking. So I have to help him help himself. We have a lot of guest chefs come in, local and national, help us value to the experience. Quality ingredients. This is the Dover sole that he made one day for dinner. Many of you may say there's not enough to eat there. This was probably a 5 or a 6 course. And of course, it's a little bit more than, but quality ingredients. Here's another one. He did a scallop with a little bit of caviar and so forth. These are all chef's food, scallop sliced below in the process. He has a community table, chef's table, that he gets to play with. Nobody tells him what the menu is. Nobody tells the members what the menu is, but he gets to play. This is his Friday night where he gets to go further than anywhere else. Quality desserts. This is a classic French dessert in macaroons and so forth. Professional reincarnation was my role. A general leader is a searcher of consensus, but a molder of consensus. So I'm not searching for consensus. I'm molding these people we talked about. My calling, when you are good at what you do, be careful what you wish for. But I did move over to the front of the house and took off the beloved jacket. I now write with a pen instead of cut with a knife. I'm okay with that. It was a very, very, very rough transition. So when you talk to your executive chefs, understand my ego had to be really taken care of and really difficult. It took me almost 5 years to wonder if I'd really messed up my career by moving to the front of the house. The 3 R's, reinvention required for relevance. You've got to reinvent yourself as business people, as professionals. I have a lot of long-term employees, 15 years, 20 years, 25. The factory doesn't work like it did 25 years ago. My controller must change. In this case, the Business Journal says you're going to relearn your career in 4 times. The grouper scenario, I told you about the revelation, as Stephen Covey would say, sharpen the saw. But the grouper revolution was, I just didn't want to make any more. I didn't want to cook for the customers the way they wanted it to be cooked. And I realized that after 20 years, if I wanted to be successful as a businessman, then I had to reinvent myself. Growth and options, a lot of, I remember sitting in Marriott one time, sitting with a bunch of Ivy League graduates, sitting at a high level meeting, and I threw out the first F-bomb as the corporate chef, and I never felt so embarrassed in that environment. The F-bomb always sounded really good in the kitchen when it was loud and the dishes were clanging. Boy, does it sound uneducated and really outdated in a beautiful boardroom in Chevy Chase, Maryland, with a bunch of Ivy League executives. So I had to rechange my language. I had to rechange my views and re-educate myself completely in order for me to be approachable out in the front. Be careful what you wish for. It's a transition. A lot of my friends have asked me, some have tried, some have gone back in the process. But as Mark Twain would say, you know, they're too important in your life, the day you were born and the day you found out why. I found out I wanted to be a leader by nature, and the larger the problem, the larger the facility, the happier I am with those problems or opportunities or strategies. Master to general. So I went from a master, certified master chef, to a general manager. Interesting, very difficult, because I was really not questioned. Now I'm questioned every single day, every single moment, by every single person. It's okay. It's just a change. Seek to understand, as I talked about the journey of change, we talked about a little bit of that. Personal norms, emotional intelligence, understanding that. Marketing is where I spend the majority of my time. We didn't communicate well to our members, and we customize it. We survey everything we do now. A quick little survey out, like Mother's Day, quickly within 12 hours, survey, get the feedback. I must have data, or all of a sudden my members are going to control their opinions and personalities and views. Full time, no maybes. We market all the time. We have disciplined channels, icons for enforcement because nobody wants to read anymore, print versus digital, when, where, and why, and an annual calendar, be there first. We give them all of the major events in the club in January, because if I wait till May, the country club is there, the school is there, the vacations are there, the family's there, and the politics are there of the family, and I don't have a shot in heaven to getting any participation unless I get there first. Who am I talking to? Why should members listen? When do I talk to them? What are members supposed to do with the message? We go through every bit of this strategy, but we know exactly who we're talking to, and we use barking dogs and Google Analytics to tell us who's listening, what my open ratio are, because every one of you sit there and go, I didn't get that. Well, 65% of the people opened the e-blast on Monday. 75% of the people filled out the survey for this. Our newsletter is still this, and I can show them data that says I'm reaching. We have 21 different channels of communication in the club. So we customize, because we know people are only subliminally listening to what they would like when they want to. We know when to send the e-blast. We know exactly when and time, based on analytics, when people will look for it. Control the content. We control everything. We as the club decide exactly what it's going to look like and how it's going to look like. 120 days out, we're out with our key membership. 120 days, we're pushing, and showing what's on the menu, what's happening, who's going to be there, what experience. 120 days. Now, 120 days we're out marketing. The bulk of my reservations, and you'll all smile, probably come 2 weeks before the event. That's okay, but at least we're out there. Static publications. We have posters and frames, talking framed posters, path of collision in and out of the club. I even have in front of the urinals in the fitness center for men and the urinals in the bathrooms, beautiful curio boxes with information. Why not capture that 5 seconds of time when they don't want to look at anything else besides the wall? I'm there advertising something in the process with lots of pictures. Here's an example of some of our culinary. We have a culinary series program, so we put everything in there about the culinary series for the year. We obviously pull things like Chopped. Why not reinvent the wheel? We might as well use people who are in the Food Network. They know what Chopped means. All I have to say is Chopped, and they already have an idea. Why recreate the wheel? It's like happy hour. Reinvent annual events, guest chefs, hometown heroes, Food Network stars. We brought in top chefs. These gentlemen used to work with me, Kevin Sprague and Kenny Gilbert, but they came in and did an event. They add value to the annual event. It does not discourage chefs. It adds value. Hey, we had 2 top chefs. We had personal, ethnicity, general, trendings. 50% old favorites in the events, 50% new teasers. Because if I do the same thing every year, they'll say, we already did that, Lawrence. We already went to that one. No, new teasers every single time. Here's our newsletter. Every one of our newsletters have a theme. The March issue is culinary. The March, April, the May issue is governance. The July issue is fitness. The September, everyone has a theme. It covers everything in the club, but it has a theme. Those are some of the front covers of the magazines. Collision marketing, I learned this from Zappos CEO, Tony, when I read his book. You must be in their way. So we have bottle wraps on our water. We wrap. If we give them 90 days out, we can wrap bottles. We have digital in the elevators. We have happy hour. We put tags in the cars. We put gifts in the cars. We put things up on the wall. We have digital in the elevators. So anywhere you are, we're going to talk to you subliminally and lightly and softly. Icons. Everybody reads. So every club inside the club has an icon now. If you looked at this, you wouldn't think we're 148 years. We keep the architectural status of the club, but we have fun with the icons and the fresh and clean look of this. People read with their eyes right now. They have no time for small print. Fitness is not forgotten. We handpick, we have recipes, we have fitness in the process. Fitness is a huge piece for us. We fill the lockers. Many of you have done that before. This is a subliminal ad we put out. This is non-directional, but this we have 4 subliminal ads that go out to the public in magazines. It doesn't say anything but the Union Club. They can't come to the chef's table. They don't know how to get to the chef's table. It just shows them that something is happening at the Union Club. We have a wedding one, we have a meeting and events, we have a catering, and we have a culinary. Data, speed to market, member surveys, problem, preference versus a problem, employee satisfaction, selection tools, sales don't lie. Breakfast was slow, and I'll ask the question, who'd you dine with? If you dined with a business client that you really don't like, breakfast couldn't have come fast enough. But what about if you're dining with mom? I might still be too slow, but you don't mind because you're sitting across from mom. So mom could mess me up just as mad as the bad business customer. So I always ask, what were you doing and how were you doing it? And then what was the trend? But I just ask a simple question, who did you dine with? Allergy without documented data is just an opinion. We talk about allergies and so forth like that. We try to put in preferences on most of the people. We know what somebody has, or we try to anticipate. Digital dynamics, open ratios, email blasts, survey culture, photography, privacy, website repair and maintenance, channels. The website is owned by the food and beverage, by the executive. The executive chef is responsible for shopping the website. Yes, marketing is ultimately responsible, but if he doesn't learn how to shop his own stuff, how does he know what he's selling? So every one of them are responsible for looking at the website. Explore feedback, preferences, and needs. We go back through, we have surveys, and we get plenty of feedback. We do not do a comment box. I had heard from a CEO of a very prominent company, if you still have a comment card box, you're really lagging behind. You should be anticipating. I moved my office to the lobby. Just simply the open door policy has helped me so much because they just tell me to my face as opposed to writing it somewhere. We have to find it. Top 7. These are what we ask in a survey. We don't ask if the food was hot. We talked about that with the card. Satisfaction. How did you learn about the event? Would you attend more of these styles? Did culinary offerings meet the Union Club standard? Not did you like it? Did it meet our standards? Where were your service expectations met with this event? Were you highly engaged with the theme and presentation? Please provide your email. That's all we ask. They can write in other things, but basically, how are we doing? This is our analytics that we talked about. We measure everything in the process. The suggestion box we just talked about. The CEO is a little bit more rough. He said irrelevant. I'll say that we were lagging behind. Today's comment cards is really digital and testimonial. Catering, just a little bit loose the skirt, cook to order, bride's rule, sense of place, themed bar, just a few things in there. I think all of you know that. Here's a couple of examples of our food. And that's it. I really appreciate your valuable time and any questions.
Excellent content. Thank you so much. I did have a couple of questions that came through. One was, what tools do you use for surveying your members and then collecting that data?
Yeah, so the simplest one we use is SurveyMonkey. And it's just a real simple, we customize it. We have the 5-7 questions there. We bounce out we have not done, and many of you may already do that, we have not done a club-wide survey like a McMahon, but we do individual surveys of individual events, and we only send them to the people that participate within the events.
Is that automated, or is someone on your team sending those out?
Yeah, we execute it immediately. So marketing will, so for example, Mother's Day, we don't have a lot, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, you may laugh at us, but we only had like 175 people for Mother's Day because of the pandemic, and we didn't want to open the club too large and everything. Some of you, I'm sure, do 1,200, but we have all of the emails logged in, ready to go. So all we have to do is push the button right after the event, actually. So at 3 or 4 o'clock on a Sunday, we send that out so that emotionally we can capture them as quick as possible.
How's your marketing team set up? What does that organizational structure look like?
Yeah, it's me and one other person. But we have a brand manual, and we've spent a tremendous amount of time. Now, we have outside vendors too. We have an editor for our newsletter. We have a digital marketing team for a digital performance in the process, and for our brand architectural piece that we do. I've got a digital artist. I've got a professional photographer who took all that food picture that comes in about 3 times a year. And what he'll do is knock out 20 pictures of chef, and we'll use that all year long in the process. So I use a combination of in-house work and outside vendor excellence.
There was a follow-up question just to the surveys. What's generally your response rate on those?
Yeah, great question. We are really doing well. We've got we already got back our surveys from Mother's Day, and 78% of the people surveyed sent us back something. And that's great because there's probably 20% that what's good about getting them back quickly is you've got the person who's emotionally still involved. That's why we have to send it out so quickly. If we've messed up, and that's really what we're looking for with the survey, unfortunately, we want to fix any challenges. If somebody's had an experience, not only have they told us verbally, but they're going to hit us right away in the process. But we had 75%, and normally our surveys will get somewhere around 60 to 65% response. And I think it's the speed. that we do it.
That's great. I think that was the last of the questions that came in. I have one that's maybe just a little more general. What are you most excited for the year and I guess the pandemic to end? I know that city clubs are having to deal with things much differently than country clubs and so forth, but what are you looking forward to the remainder of this year?
Well, first and foremost is so Sunday, with the exception of weddings, Sunday's 175 members was the most I had in a single room here. Wednesday, I had 50 in the ballroom and I had 75 downstairs for a reception. So let's say I did 250 for the day. That was the most in a single day that I did. Excited to see my members come back to the habits that they enjoy. Downtown, we've had civil unrest, as many of the cities have after Minneapolis crisis. The city was torn apart. Our neighborhood was destroyed. People have not come back to their offices and their buildings yet. They believe that'll happen in September. But we also picked up a club. We picked up a club during the pandemic that was struggling. So we've collected 3 clubs over the last 4 years. So what I'm really excited right now is to merge their culture into the Union Club culture. So that's been a full-time job right now. But just to returning, see the members again. They're a huge part of our satisfaction. And of course, member retention is the secret to clubs. So we've grown our membership by 100 members in 5 years. So, you know, we're at a good critical mass, but I want to see them back.
That's why we're here, I guess, right?
Exactly.
Thank you, everyone, for taking the time out of your day to spend it with us. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And Lawrence, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and all that you shared with us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.